It's 3rd of February 25, it's a Monday, and I'm just looking at Daily Mail here. The EU plans to overhaul the policy, the Refugee Convention thing after the Second World War, 1951, to overhaul the policy that forces nations to take in asylum seekers after the report admits many migrants do not integrate and form separate communities that ignore the European values. And I think it is ironic that Britain left Brexit so that we could stop, get immigration, especially from the global south and East Europe, down to zero, or that's what we were hoping. Uh, and now that we're out of Brexit, we've had 3 or 4 waves of the greatest amount ever from the global south through Boris and Rishi, like 1.5 million a year or something like that. I'm not talking about net, forget that, it just gross, that's all that matters, and newcomers. And we've had that after leaving Brexit because of Boris and Rishi. Rishi said he was going to start clamping down on it. They tried to do that at Rwanda thing, but they decided to put it through the courts. The courts just kept rejecting them, so they never got it through. But now that we've left the EU are saying that they might overhaul that 1951 Refugee Convention, which is the problem, which I've heard Nigel Farage mention a few times, and personally I've always thought it's a thing that needs to be changed. You know, they talk about the European Court of Human Rights. Yeah, change that, but that's only been around since 1999 or something. You've got to change this. This is what Winston Churchill and those agreed to after the Second World War. Yeah, just somebody stopped there in front of me, so I lost. Yeah, this was meant that for after the Second World War, where we were meant to take in, I think he's coming back, wasn't it? No, it's alright. After the Second World War, we were meant to take in neighbours who are in trouble from neighbouring countries, you know. I would say for Britain, I would expect Ukraine, fair enough, that's as far east, I would say, from Sweden, you know, Europe, basically. European Song Contest, apart from Russia, basically, I think. Not even the East European ones like Romania, or maybe they're a bit too far, but any further than that, no. But it's been actually used now so that Afghans, Syrians, and all these people who, for some reason, don't want to live in their own countries, they don't want to live in most continents, you know, like their neighbouring countries, or even the continents they're from, or other continents. They only seem to want to live in maybe 20 countries. And yeah, that's what's sort of happened, and you've basically changed those countries that were pretty successful, like Britain, America, Australia. I would say all these countries are sunk. I think what's going to happen in the long term is there's going to be little bits given off for the natives, basically, or native Brits. You know, maybe Caithness and Sutherland or something like that. And I think what you'll find is there'll be a massive waiting list, and some will get fast tracked on that. Supported the Greens, you know, who were the main ones who wanted to fast track the change, the great change, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, the EU is planning to overhaul a post-war policy that forces nations to take in asylum seekers. So this is the sort of thing that Winston Churchill agreed on, you know. The idea was you were to take people in times of war, like France, etc. Your neighbouring countries, it wasn't taking in Afghans, Syrians, Somalians, you know, a lot of them that aren't even asylum seekers really anyway. I don't agree with the asylum seeker thing anyway. I mean, Japan only takes in about 2,000 a year or something. And that's not even the worst problem. The worst problem is legal migration. The 1951 Refugee Convention established after the Second World War. This is basically the root of the problem, because this is what court rulings use, etc. And updated with rulings by European and EU courts was created in a very different geopolitical situation to that of today. You don't say. According to a diplomatic paper seen by the Times, The convention, signed by 144 countries, includes the principle of non-refoulement, which states that no asylum seeker can be forced to return to a country where their life or freedom could be seriously threatened. But this principle has been criticised as not fit for purpose, as millions of asylum seekers have requested refugee status in European countries in the last 10 years, while countries struggle to return those who failed the bid. But to me, it should have been scrapped, I don't know, 50 years ago, probably 60 years ago. I mean, probably by the end of the 50s it was out of thingy. And I wonder if this is what a lot of people used at that time to come from, say, Pakistan and that, I don't know. Um, for some reason they don't want to live there. We don't know why, nobody ever asks. You would think it would be utopia. Um, as millions of asylum seekers have requested refugee status, currently there are only limits on the application for refugee status in extraordinary situations, which didn't take the challenges faced by EU governments into account, according to the report drafted by Poland. Paper which was discussed by EU Interior Ministers last week came prior to proposals to speed up deporting failed asylum seekers as well as those involved in crime. All of them should be kept in camps, basically. All of them, preferably not on the land of the country that they're trying to think. So for Britain, we could use Georgia or the Ascension Islands, that sort of thing, which has been mentioned before. All of them should be kept that way. Very few should get asylum because their women's rights and LGBT rights, in my opinion, would be seen as not reliably in line with Yvette Cooper's and Nicola Sturgeon and even J.K. Rowling, that sort of spectrum. I mean, Nicola Sturgeon wants the workers. She thinks that's part of Scottish women expressing themselves, freedom of expression. The paper, which was discussed by EU Interior Ministers, came prior to proposals to speed up deporting failed asylum seekers as well as those involved in crime. The report stated that some migrants do not integrate and form separate communities that ignore European values. See, here you're talking about European values, you're talking about white values. So they're actually saying they're ignoring our values, our values. So you've got to be honest about that, which adds to the challenges faced by European countries. Because female GM is now a British tradition. It never was in medieval times or whatever, but since 1948 it's a British tradition now. And soon we'll have MPs that support it, basically. So they're saying here, when they say European, they're meaning white, really. So they're being R-word. And I encourage them to do that because you've got to be honest. But they're not being honest about it. They're calling it European values, British values. I mean, how dare they say British values, aren't a woman wearing a full thingy or whatever. How dare they say that's not British values? They've let people become British that do want it to be British. So if you, what they're actually meaning, like Nicola Sturgeon when she uses that term, or Rebecca Cooper, what they're actually meaning is white native values. Really, that's what they're meaning. So it's a bit R of them. Failed asylum seekers as well as refugees with permanent residence have been behind a wave of violent crimes and murders committed in European countries like Germany, but they were protected from deportation under the refugee laws. See, the law is an ass, basically. I mean, I would have voted for Trump, but I'm no fan of him. But on this issue, you've got to just scrap up the rule book because it was daft. The law was an ass. There have been EU proposals of establishing centres outside of the EU for migrants waiting on the decision of their asylum application, but the Convention is considered an obstacle. Plans for new rules allowing deportations and repatriation centres outside the EU are due to be challenged as a breach of the Convention in court. Millions of migrants illegally entered into EU countries during the Syrian refugee crisis in 2015 as they looked to find asylum, with requests having remained high since. Discontent with this has resulted in support of nationalist and radical populist parties all over Europe, which promise to combat the number of asylum seekers being allowed to stay in their countries. Well, I totally agree with the centre-right and maybe some centre-left feeling this way. I think the centre-left in Denmark feel that way. But I say to the people there, you've still got to vote the party that's seen as the bogeyman on this issue, who's seen as far on it, even though probably most of them aren't. Like Reform are far too soft. Because in 5 or 10 years' time, I think female natives of Britain who support the Greens will be saying to Reform Youths are far too soft on this issue, because they'll be hysterical then, you know. Discontent with this has resulted in supportiveness. You've still got to vote for these parties, you know. Forget all the other things that they support. I don't even know what they support. You've still got to vote for them. So vote for Reform, etc. in Britain, UKIP or whatever. It doesn't matter what their policies are, just on this one issue as a protest vote. Nigel says they're not a protest party. I'm saying they are on one issue. Forget all their other policies. Rupert Law's a bit better at talking on this, but only just on asylum. I mean, you've got to talk about this on legal as well. In Germany, migration is one of the most important topics for voters in the upcoming elections this month. So they've got an election this month. As a hard-right alternative for Germany, party gains momentum. They're not getting enough momentum for me from what I've seen. No, they're like 23%, 24%. Most of that's East Germany, which is seen as sort of the harsh bit of Germany. I think the West are still deluded, West Germany, you know. The message just isn't getting thing at home, despite that Saudi guy knocking down lots of people at the Christmas thingy, and then they've had stabbings. A policeman was stabbed in the neck and killed. Conservative leader Friedrich Merz, who is expected to defeat Social Democrat Chancellor Olaf Scholz, has pushed for tough measures to honour asylum seekers. This has prompted anger from former Chancellor Angela Merkel. She's one of the great disasters, along with Boris Johnson and Tony Blair. Although to me, the internet was the main problem, because as soon as these people get the internet, they were wanting to get away from their homelands, basically. They weren't going to neighbouring countries or whatever. They were only going to about 20 countries they were picking from, and they've got a tier thing of that. America is the top of the tier. Chancellor Angela Merkel, whose decision to open the borders to over 1 million first-time migrants in 2015 has been criticised by the right for triggering the migrant crisis. I believe this is wrong, Merkel said, referring to the outcome of a vote in Parliament last Wednesday, when a CDU motion was passed with support from the nationalist AfD, breaking a long-held political taboo in Germany. So, this comes as Sweden unveiled tough new requirements for citizenship as part of tighter immigration rules aimed at integrating migrants and upholding the country's values. The government said earlier this month that they wanted to toughen the rules for obtaining Swedish nationality, with a probe recommending honest living as a prerequisite. What does honest living mean? You know, it doesn't look as if they're not including women's rights or LGBT rights in their citizenship test yet. I mean, the British citizenship test is things like when was the Battle of Agincourt? Isn't things like what's your view on women's rights? What's your view on female GM? What's your view on women being allowed to work and stuff like that? Because if you brought in women's rights and LGBT rights to the British citizenship test, I get a feeling that most of them would fail it, you know. So, although they'd obviously lie, but you know, I'd be happy for Yvette Cooper and Stephen Tatchell to be asked to develop a thingy test, and all of them to take a lie detector, you know. But you're never going to do anything like that. It also recommended extending the required duration of time spent in the country prior to obtaining citizenship. This is Sweden, increasing to 8 years from the current 5. Not long enough. I think in the likes of Dubai and Singapore, really, the workers that come in, they don't get citizenship, basically. They may work there for 15 years or something, but they don't really get citizenship. So all those people that you see there that are foreign, they're not citizens, they're not getting citizenship. It's not like Britain where if you hang around 5 years, if you come for a uni course, you leave it after 2 months and you end up stacking shelves, you know, for 5 years, then you can apply for right to remain. That's you, basically, you're a citizen. So that should all be scrapped here, in my opinion, as well. I know that Steve Bidwell said that as well, or what's his name again? Yeah, you just revoke that right to thing me. There's no right to thing me. Just scrap it. Those seeking citizenship would also have to pass a test of Swedish society and values and do a language exam, according to the government audit probe. Citizenship must be earned, not be handed out unconditionally, Migration Minister Johan Fosso said in a post on Instagram. I think Switzerland's going to have to reverse though, because I think this year they've had a bombing every day to do with, and they're saying it's children under 18, they're calling children under 18. But really what the gangs are doing, they're saying to the children, you do it because they'll be really soft with you. So really they are mugs. I mean, I don't think even 14s are good enough. I mean, maybe under 7, you know, they can't be charged as adults, especially to do with murder or whatever, you know. Forsyth told a press conference that citizenship also helped tie people of disparate backgrounds together in a common. It's not going to work, basically. In 5 or 10 years, the native females of UK who vote Green and Labour are going to be hysterical on this subject. He said it was crucial to always be very clear about the values that must apply in Sweden. So this is all about Sweden anyway, I don't know why. Family is important, but it does not stand above the law. There is equality between the sexes. You can marry whoever you want. Girls and boys have the right to swim and play football if you don't accept that Sweden is not the country for you, the minister said. Well, they're talking the right way, but it's just a start, basically, you know. So basically, I think they're going to have to do a reversal. But as I say, the other idea that I've got is maybe give the natives of Sweden their own little bit of land, you know, and they can have that. Then Sweden, the rest of Sweden can get on with its multicultural thing, maybe, which they tend to call the global majority, but what they mean is the global south majority, basically, because that's what's going to happen to the UK, Sweden, all these countries. So it's good to see, I think Trump's unfit to be president, but it's good to see him on the thing. I mean, it's actually an open goal, really, you know, because really we've had an open door on it. Because the UK at the moment, Keir Starmer's recently just done an agreement with Tunisia to support asylum seeker education for improved employment opportunities in their home countries. So basically, he's paying them to try and stop them coming here, basically. That's Tunisia, which isn't at war or anything, you know. And here's someone saying, if the EU tightens its asylum policies while the UK does not follow suit, there is a real risk that more migrants will attempt to enter the UK illegally. Stricter deportation measures in Europe could push people towards the UK. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I just think that's interesting. Everything seems to be going that way now. We're too late, basically. We'll need a reversal, I think. Or, like I say, need to cut off a little bit of the country for the natives, etc. That's for America as well, for the community who created the very desirable America. I'm not talking about the native Indians there, of course. And the only places that Britain colonised, Canada, America, New Zealand, Australia, basically. Yeah, okay, that's all I've got to say on this just now. That last that 1951 thing might be hanging. The only things you can do at the moment is, in the UK, vote reform, vote for them in council by-elections, any chance you get, MP by-election. We're not a very democratic country, so you need to wait 4 years to vote, 4.5 years. In the Scottish elections, vote reform. Join YouGov and say that you're voting reform, and when they ask you what three political things are you concerned about, only pick one issue, begins with IMM. You've got to hammer the message home. Maybe do the government petitions. Yeah, that sort of thing, you know, because really they don't listen to you, the MPs. And also, on this subject, they seem to be the exact opposite of what I think people want, even in Scotland, because Reform are now at 17% in Scotland in the most recent poll over the other day. 2 years ago you couldn't select a Reform in a YouGov poll in Scotland. Well, you probably could, or it was in the other section. A year ago they were in the other section. I think John Curtis was saying that they've not made any inroads, you know, about a year ago, but that's not true at all. So, yeah, that's all you can do for at the moment. Okay, goodbye.